What's up guys, it's Spanj from Skip Gaming here with an Empyrion Galactic Survival video. Me and the boys have been playing the game for a little while now, and I thought I'd give my hand at creating my own ship rather than using presets or things that other people have downloaded. So this is my attempt at recreating a fighter bomber craft. And I've nicked the design from a game called Nexus, the Jupiter Incident. 10 points if you guys can name the craft that I've attempted to make here. Leave it in the comments if you can figure it out. You can have 10 skip points. Not that they amount to anything or result in any prizes or whatsoever. But yeah, let me know what you think of the video and whether I nailed the design or not, or completely cocked it up. But hopefully you'll enjoy the video, and well, I'll come back to you in a minute, and we'll talk about the ship a little bit more. But yeah, otherwise enjoy. So one of the things I was struggling with most with this build, I think, was the light. I've opted to build it in Omicron orbit. Because then you got the freedom of up, down, left, down, right. Whereas if you build it on a planet, gravity becomes an issue. Where you place the core is going to be the bottom of the ship, and it's going to be very difficult to then build underneath that. So build in orbit to try and make it easier, but then lighting is an issue. And I've tried to position it so I have light, but as you can see there, there's only light on one side of the ship, so it's really difficult for me to see the other. side and place the blocks sort of accurately in the dark. I don't know if you noticed earlier, but I tried to see if I could place a work light to just have it floating behind me, but no joy. The other thing I find pretty challenging in this build is figuring out which way to rotate some of the blocks, to get them to fit. Some of the sort of corner pieces and things like that, to get lines to meet up. It's quite difficult to figure out which way I needed to rotate the piece to make it fit right. So often you'll find me just spinning a piece over and over again for ages. But eventually managed to figure it out. I think as the video goes on, so I get a little bit more adept at figuring out the spins, the piece placements, figuring out the corner pieces a little bit more. But certainly an interesting build. This being the first build I've ever done in Empyrion. I think I did alright, maybe. But yeah, it's starting to take shape now, although I wouldn't say it's not even halfway through yet. So, and I make some questionable design decisions here. Look at the state of that nose cone. This is just awful. You just look at that, go, this is not right here. This just doesn't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to delete that. Let's get rid of that. Yep. Ugh. What was I thinking? Here we go about the spinning again. Look. Oh, hey, found it. Nice. So yeah, I decided to revise the nose cone there and make it a little bit more aerodynamic. So that looks a little bit better. That's nice. I was starting to come up to the point now where I was trying to decide whether to have an interior part of the ship. So I hadn't quite decided whether you would be able to get inside the ship and walk around to some extent. No, it was never going to be very big compartment, but it's quite an important part of the design to decide early on whether there is internals to the ship or not, because that affects where you put things like your fuel tank, your ammo boxes, storage, fridges, whatever you're going to put in the ship. So if you're going to have them in the ship, then, and if you have access in the ship, you can then obviously put things in them when you're walking around within. Now, if you don't have access to the ship, you've got to get access to these components, the fuel tanks and whatnot, from outside the ship. So what you see me doing there is putting some hatches on the outside of the ship there for those fuel tanks, and doing it here as well with this ammo box. So at this point, I still hadn't decided for sure that I wasn't going to have an interior, but I figure that you can't have everything in one place inside the interior, because, well, if this thing is in combat and it's taking damage, the last thing you want is a lucky shot going through the side of the hull, hitting an ammo box, exploding, taking out your fuel tanks, which then explode, which take out your oxygen tanks, which then explode, and suddenly in one hit your entire ship's destroyed. So spreading things like your ammo boxes and fuel tanks and O2 tanks out as much as possible is a good idea. So which is why I've put an ammo box out on the landing leg, the missile leg. I don't know what to call it, the bit at the bottom, basically. And I'll put ammo boxes in other places, and the fuel tanks there, I'm just going to keep them there. I'm not going to put any more fuel tanks around, because that's just spreading out explosives even more. I think underneath a ship like that is going to be relatively safe place for them. Who knows? Until this thing actually sees action, we probably won't know the awful design decisions that I've made at this point. did decide to close off the interior of the ship in the end, so there's a bit of a cavity inside, but you know, I can add more RCS units or things in there. There's room to build on if I want to in the future, if I want to change it in the future. So yeah, there's a bit more thinking to do with regards to where to put everything on the ship now. There's sort of coming up to finishing off the right, I don't know what to call it, wing, I suppose, the bit on the right of the ship, you know, and really just sort of finishing that off. There is a feature in Galactic Survival Empyrion where you can enable a symmetry tool while you're building. I chose not to enable that at this point because I wasn't sure when I started this if I wanted both sides to be, you know, identical anyway. So it turns out they do end up being identical, but you know, there's scope there. The option was there. I could have added a different weapon on the left to the right, you know, or changed the. Well, I got the ammo boxes in O2. I could have put something else on the other side, you know. And in the end, I went with symmetry anyway. So, you know, if you sat there thinking, why haven't you used the symmetry tool? To save so much time? Yes, it would have. You're right. And I chose not to at the beginning, and then got too invested in it to turn it on anyway. So, so this is sort of, you know, when I decided to go with the pulse laser in the end on either side. Which does, I think that is the component that means you need the rare minerals in the end, and you know, you could open up this design, take those lasers off, and put chain guns instead, and then you probably won't need the rare minerals then, you know, and you could build this ship as a sort of tier 2 or tier 3, but you know, laser guns are so cool. I couldn't resist putting pulse lasers on it. So yeah, it's a decision I went with, but starting to really take shape now. So as you might have noticed as well, I've become a little bit more adept at getting the blocks in the right way round. He says, as it's a struggle with blocks still, but you know, it's better than what I started with. And hopefully you're starting to get an idea of the shape of the ship now as well. So we're coming up to the end of part 1 of this build, so if you want to see what it turns out to look like in the end, join me for part 2. See you then.